Welcome to the Modern Yogi Podcast. An exploration of ancient wisdom.
Hello.
Welcome back. We are on episode number
55.
Thank you so much for tuning in. We switched the setting for this. I know you can't see us. Maybe you can see us on Instagram, but we are right along the Pacific Ocean right now.
Yeah.
So we're no longer in Priya's kitchen.
Yes. We have the beach behind us.
Temporarily moved to the beach. So shout out to the beach.
I feel like that's like when you guys laughed that I was giving shout outs to things that normally don't have shout outs.
Shout out to material nature. Shout out to
the ocean. Shout out to the sky.
I was really trying to figure out where you were going with that one. And I was like, I would like to aid you, but I just don't know how.
You know my sentences start out like that, actually.
I like that you started off like that because we were saying before going on air, we always get little butterflies before starting. And part of me sometimes thinks, will I even make sense what starts coming out of my mouth? But then I realize, we're so relaxed on this podcast that whatever.
Shout out to Shamali's butterflies.
More like pterodactyls, but we're good.
Oh my goodness.
Nice. Okay, so quick recap on last episode. We talked about how the demigods are givers. They give wealth. Who is that goddess?
Lakshmi.
And they give education. Goddess?
Saraswati.
And they give nice husbands removing obstacles.
I'm sorry, who's that?
Sorry, not nice husbands. Just they remove obstacles. Oh, Ganesh,
yeah.
right? Okay, so, but for our spiritual growth, which god or goddess is best to pray to? Krishna. That sounded kind of evil.
I know, actually, we should fix that.
Krishna. We'll work on that. We'll work on that later.
Yeah, for sure.
So that was the whole recap of the last episode. We talk about the demigods, and if you actually want to grow spiritually, who do you want to connect to? It's Krishna.
Right,
Yeah.
because bigger picture, we're under chapter 7, which is all about knowledge of the absolute. It's all about
of Krishna.
What is it about? Krishna's features, his qualities. Because you know what? We've always said to know someone is to love someone, or vice versa. To love someone is to know someone. So if we want to love someone, we have to know about them. So here, Krishna is directly telling Arjuna what it is that's so elusive, so mysterious about him, where so many people don't know him. Out of millions and millions of people who try to perfect their lives, only 1 in a million might really understand Krishna, if anything. So here he's telling Arjuna exactly what he wants him to know about himself.
All right, and we are going to get started on chapter 7, text number 24. But before we do, the invocation, ladies.
Om Gyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
Translation. I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him.
I just want to say I'm really proud I didn't burst out laughing because
I'm really proud
you
of
made
you
a face
too.
right before we started. And I looked at you right as you made the face and I thought, not today, Giggles, not today.
Good job.
I have a question. Also, on the Wisdom of the Sages, they sometimes do the invocation, and then they say, I offer my respectful obeisances unto them. So they make it more gender neutral.
Oh, say it again. Say the difference again.
So they say, like, I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual teacher opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto them.
Oh, I love that. We would love to. Yes.
Should we transition to them?
Yeah, it's referring to the spiritual master.
Yeah,
because you know what's
it could
very
be
cool?
a man or woman.
Yeah, in the path of bhakti, they made it so that women can also give initiation, accept disciples. So I think that's very cool about this path is so progressive because first of all, not only with regards to spiritual masters, but also divinity has the masculine and feminine form of divinity. So
True say.
It's just very progressive.
So
Very nice.
as of episode 55, it will now be them.
Awesome.
Beautiful.
You know what we also said we were going to do? We were going to say who we are.
Because people. Wait. So,
I should tell this story.
Yeah, tell the story.
So my stepmother messaged me. She listens to the podcast. She loves the podcast. Shout out to Karen. Woo-hoo.
What's up, Karen?
We love you, Karen.
She told me that she's been listening to the podcast and it took her 18 episodes to realize that there was a third person on the podcast.
Because you know what? Some people might get confused because they hear Shama and then I'm Shamali. So, they might think we're saying the same name when they're like, oh, Shama must be a shortened way of saying Shamali. So somehow people think some people have thought there's only two people.
Priya and Shamali.
I think we have very distinct
That's
voices.
what we
though.
think.
That's what I
So if
thought.
you've been confused this whole time, this is Priya Darshini.
Wait, Priya, what did you eat for breakfast today? So now we can hear Priya's voice and we know what Priya sounds like. Go, Priya.
I had a chia seed pudding that we made last night. It had mangoes and blueberries.
See, this is Priya's voice, right? It sounds very elegant. Like it's very, very beautiful.
It's
Okay.
nice.
Shama.
Shama.
This is me.
What do you have for? Why are
Wait,
we doing
let
breakfast?
her. When we say Shama, she needs to speak
Oh,
because
hello.
then everyone will get confused with our voices.
So Shama, share anything you want to share.
Hello, my name is Shama. Stage name Astalal, just in case people will get confused on Instagram. And
Stage name.
Yeah, from stand-up comedy.
That's right.
Because, I do stand-up comedy. That's why my voice sounds so different than Priya's. That's just elegant. Mine sounds more cartoony.
You've said that before.
more
No, it
daffy.
does not.
You don't think my voice sounds more cartoony?
I love it.
Oh my God.
I love you though.
Oh, thank you.
In a good way. Your voice sounds humorous.
Thank you. So for breakfast this morning, I had fiber cereal. I labeled it as adult cereal.
Okay,
in
I
my
think
cabinet.
they understand who you are now.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I was about to go on, but you're right. Thanks for cutting me off. All right, now Shamali.
Hello, world. I am Shamali. This is me, and this is my voice.
What did
are
you have for
hearing now.
breakfast this morning?
Well, see, I prefer savory over sweet any day, no matter what meal it is. So for breakfast, I had this kale salad with like all sorts of veggies and beans, and that was my breakfast.
Wow,
Nice,
we eat
very
really
good.
healthy breakfast.
Look at
across
us. Good job, guys.
Or are we
What about me?
lying?
Oh, so this is, he loves his name. No, he doesn't. Producer Lord Sir Abhijit. He's shaking his head.
Who
are you?
I'm sure you don't confuse my voice for anyone else. And I don't eat breakfast.
That's fact.
Well, breakfast is the
Look at
most
that.
important meal of the day. But anyway, you probably didn't tune into this podcast to hear about breakfast. So we'll continue.
Yes,
All right,
but
those
hopefully
are our
now you know our
voices.
voices. We'll try to be more clear about who's speaking at any given time.
Yes.
Yeah.
So one last time. What's your name?
Priya Darshini.
What's your name?
Shama.
And what's my name? Shamali. There we go.
Nice.
Okay,
All
if we
right.
need to, we can give you all nicknames. So it's not, because we can call you Pranati because it's Shamali Pranati.
Okay.
And
Oh,
then
this is so confusing.
No, I like Shamali.
I can't even remember that. I can't even remember my own name.
Okay, let's
move forward.
Okay, continue. All right,
Okay,
chapter
so-
7, text number 24.
Take it away, Priya Darshini. That will be her voice you hear.
Unintelligent men who do not know me, Krishna, perfectly, think that I, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Spog, Krishna, was impersonal before and have now assumed this personality. Due to their small knowledge, they do not know my, Krishna's, higher nature, which is imperishable and supreme.
Okay, so if we can do that like one sentence at a time,
Deal,
right?
deal.
So unintelligent men, he's saying stupid people. Right? No. What is Krishna saying?
not just stupid people. It's not about. I don't think Krishna's trying to be mean at all. I think he's trying to say those that don't understand the reality that there's a supreme personality of Godhead, right?
Right.
Those who maybe worship demigods because they think like, oh, I just want to get whatever the thing I need, whether it's money, whatever it is, right?
So these less intelligent people once thought that Krishna was impersonal.
They might think that he used to be impersonal and now he has a body because he's in the battlefield, right?
Right,
They might be like, oh, like only right now you have a body.
Right. Because in the purport is saying, Lord Krishna here in this whole section and in the entire Bhagavad Gita, he's speaking to Arjuna in his own personal form. Yet still, because of confusion, ignorance, different reasons, impersonalists or people who don't think Krishna has a physical form still argue that Krishna has no form. Like he's this giant light or whatever they might think. They don't. It's very hard sometimes for people to accept God has a personal form. Divinity has a personal form. Mm-hmm. My mom used to say that both of my parents were raised within Catholicism, traveled the world on their spiritual search, found Bhakti Yoga, voila, answers to all our questions. Anyway, she used to say that when she first came into contact with the philosophy, one of her questions was about how can we limit God, who's all expansive, to a personal form? Isn't that limiting him? But then you start realizing, like the deeper you go into it, that, well, if we have a personal form, why wouldn't our source where we come from also have a personal form where he's just going to be what? A boring, bland, big light? No.
Right.
I mean, he can also be that, but he also has a personal form that we're trying to develop a loving relationship with. So this text, this purport basically unpacks that.
So it's easier to connect to someone or something that has a similar form to us because we recognize it. We can understand how to love it, where it's like hard to love the wind. You can't give like the wind a hug or anything.
You can't get too
You could
deep.
try.
You can
but-
really try.
Right.
But you can't get too deep, right? Because the more, I mean, it's just like any relationship, right? If you have a relationship with nature, you can be like, wow, it's so fulfilling. It's so amazing. But how far does that go when you're not in nature?
Right.
True.
Like how do you keep that momentum going? Whereas when we become Krishna conscious and we're always thinking about Krishna, it's like, oh, I'm about to eat something and oh, maybe I'll make Krishna's favorite sweet, or like there's always a way to remember because of so many things we know about him, right?
Yeah. And it's interesting, people who come into this contact come into this philosophy coming from different paths might find it easier one way or another. Like I had a conversation with one of my friends and I was saying, yeah, for people who maybe come into this philosophy from the yoga crowd or from somewhere that they didn't have a personal conception of God, for them, it might be easier to connect to the impersonal form, to his energy, and harder to connect to the personal form. And my friend was like, really, I find it easier to connect to the personal form and harder to connect to the the energy out there.
Right.
So it all depends where you're coming from, but we're trying to connect to God, to Krishna in a personal way. Because like you said, Shama, that's how you can go even deeper when we're connecting to someone who is similar like us, but divine. You know, we have material bodies. He doesn't have a material. I think that's very important to clarify. He's not a person just like us in the sense of we have kind of like, you know, these gross bodies.
Our bodies decay. His doesn't.
Exactly.
And that brings us to the second part, right? Due to their small knowledge, their tiny, tiny brains, right? That's what Krishna's saying.
That's Shama's words, not Krishna's.
And they do not know Krishna's higher nature, which is imperishable and supreme. So again, it doesn't decay, what you said.
Yeah.
Can I? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, also, I think it's important to understand that this particular text is not about the connection that we have with Krishna, but rather understanding his existence, right?
His personal
it's like his
form.
personal form. It's not really about the connection aspect. It's about like, and it talks a little bit about this here. It's like you can conceptually understand that God exists and still deny that he has a body. You can be super smart and still deny that God could even have a body, right? So he's saying like if you don't want to see it, you won't.
Right. Exactly.
If you don't want to see it, you won't. Like
exactly.
If you know, I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah,
but totally.
yeah.
So
there are so many, what you were saying reminded me of like when I was in college, I read so many studies that under the psychology of it, that you see kind of what you want to see. Right.
Yeah.
And you know, you can say if there was more to what you wanted to say.
Go for it.
Because there's actually, for those who kind of seek the intellectual side, because, you know, they might think, really, God has a personal form? Sure. But there are two modern day arguments that kind of show God really does have, our source has a personal form. And I want to kind of break that down and interrupt me if there's any thoughts along the way.
Totally.
So two ways that now we encounter divinity are as the source and as the essence. So on one hand, this is called the cosmological argument for God.
Where is this coming from?
This is actually, I took a course, there's a teacher in our line, Keshav Maharaj, and he started breaking it down and talking about this in a very interesting way. I can talk about that.
So you're sharing
later.
his thoughts.
Yeah, but this is actually an actual modern day argument, not just from him. He was bringing it up in a very cool way, but modern day thinkers talk about this cosmological argument for God that talks about everything has their source from something else. So the cause of something living is always something living. Essentially, life comes from life, which is exactly what Krishna is saying here in the purport. Something with a form cannot come from something without a form.
Without a form.
So in a very simple term, that's the cosmological argument. So if we've never had the experience of something living coming from matter, then how can we assume that the original source of everything was matter, you know? So that's the first thing that Krishna is saying here, divinity as the source. So that's the cosmological argument.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay.
We're following.
You're
We're
doing good.
following. You're
On the
doing great.
second hand, then we also have divinity as the essence. So we've heard in the Gita, whenever you see beauty, opulence, incredible design, Krishna says, know that I am behind it. So today, that the modern day argument for that is known as the teleological argument for God.
Okay, I lost you. Go ahead.
So I'm going to break it down. So basically the teleological argument for God is whenever there's design and order, there must be a designer and intelligence behind it, because order does not come from disorder and beauty does not come from chaos. All these things have their source in a higher supreme intelligence. So basically Krishna is saying, when you look at the world, know that I'm the source and the essence. So those are the two arguments, the cosmological argument and the teleological argument, that point towards we come from a source who also has a divine personality.
So for like, I'm trying to think of another example. So like if you see a beautiful building, right, you know that there's an architect.
Exactly. I love that example because that points towards, Prabhupada, who we've talked about before. He was a saint in our line who brought all this knowledge here to the West, this ancient knowledge. Prabhupada said, under a similar example you just gave, Shama, he said, he was looking at a flower once and he said, just by looking at this flower, you can become God conscious, because just by seeing the beauty in and of itself in this world proves God. Because how can there be beauty from matter, chaos, and randomness?
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Super cool.
That's
Yeah.
really cool.
So the next time, listeners, that you go outside on a walk and you see the beauty that surrounds you, that's you're going to realize, okay, not only does this come from God as the source, so this is all coming from God, but God is also the essence of it. This was all created by a higher intelligence who has a personal form. Because how could we possibly come from something without a form, like matter and chaos and randomness?
I hope we're not coming from randomness.
Yeah.
It's kind of impossible. Think about just the human body, how children are born. If it was all that easy for us to do it ourselves, there would be children being born without humans.
Right.
Like in a weird way to put it that way,
Like through egg form.
Yeah. Like the Matrix or like, I don't know, some weird way. You know what I'm talking about?
Like humans laying eggs? What do you mean weird way?
Like in those sci-fi movies where they have like these containers and then there's like a giant, like a baby being born into this like water
Chamber.
Yeah. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
But like that doesn't really exist.
Hella
hope.
weird and super random.
I know. I'm
I'm into it.
Like, how could the human body be so incredibly efficient and useful to do all the things that it does? Like, there's nothing that has been recreated to be as capable.
Right. And even people who live along what you're saying is a good point, Priya, because even people who say that, scientists are nowadays learning how to create life, but they're using they're not using dead matter.
They're using
the building blocks from the source. So they're not recreating anything from scratch.
Right.
And I like these two arguments that when I heard him say at Keshav March, I wanted to bring it up because some people, this ancient knowledge enters through different avenues in our mind. And some people, it can be really easy to accept and have faith. Yes, I believe in it. God is a person. And for others, they have a harder time conceptualizing it. If it has to enter through the intellect, through rational arguments. So when I heard these, I thought these are really good arguments to point towards, it's not just have faith, have faith. These things have a scientific basis. Srila Prabhupada never said that this is actually a religion. This is a spiritual science because it has a very deep foundation in scientific provable knowledge.
I love that. That's really sweet. I also think there's another aspect of this purport that Prabhupada is really emphasizing through Krishna's words. He's saying that there's kind of a couple of requirements to really be able to understand Krishna.
Yeah.
And one of those is to render devotional service and then to start developing Krishna consciousness, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, yes, we can understand all these facts, but it might actually be hard for us to grasp.
Right.
Even if we understand logistically, okay, you're saying there has to be a source in order for there to be us, in order for there to be the earth, in order for there to be nature, whatever, right? There needs to be like a place where it all comes from. Okay, fine, I understand that. But it might not mean that I understand Krishna. It might not mean that I fully understand his position, who he is, and what he means to me, and what right? Like the whole constitutional relationship that we have. And so Prabhupada's basically saying that in order to really understand Krishna, we have to do devotional service and we have to start developing that Krishna consciousness where we're trying to learn more and have that mood of what is that, like humility and
You know, exactly. Because I think you're saying something super important that I'm looking, all of my highlights in the purport essentially talk about the points you're bringing up, Priya, because Prabhupada says that it's only by mercy that we can know Krishna,
mercy.
you know? And what you're saying about devotional service is the link. How can we get mercy? Through devotional service.
Right.
And so with this devotional service, we have to kind of have this don't knock it till you try it type of mentality where it's like we have to give this process the benefit of the doubt, right? And it's like we have to make this underlying assumption that, okay, let's say for instance, Krishna is God, right? And so let's just take everything that he's saying as gospel for a second, right? And let's try to build this relationship, right? Let's try to chant his name. Let's try to offer things to him before we eat, right? Let's try to like offer flowers if we see flowers on the road, right? Or like, let's try to give him water. Let's try to build that beautiful, loving bond with him and see how that goes, because that's like the first step towards building that relationship.
Yes.
Exactly. Go ahead.
We're going to say the same thing. It actually says the first step is by chanting the Maha Mantra.
Right.
Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And you know, Shama, I was going to say, I like that you brought up the don't knock it till you try it type of thing, because since this is a spiritual science, you have to give the experiment a try. It's not scientific to ask for proof before doing an experiment. So you have to have an experience beyond faith.
Yeah.
And that's actually something Keshav Maharaj brought up in this same thing where he was bringing out the arguments. I'm going to say it again. It's not scientific to ask for proof before doing an experiment. So we're doing the experiment of Krishna consciousness with yourself as kind of like the case study. Give it a try and then see.
Yeah. Another cool thing that this purport talks about is this idea of Krishna being always existing, but at the same time, never really. Okay, so it says in the Gita, the Lord says that although he is unborn, he still appears. So this idea of like Krishna's always been, he will always be, and you know, the same as our souls, right? Satchit Ananda, full of eternal blissful knowledge. But he still appeared in front of Arjuna. He appeared in that particular time, place, and circumstance to deliver this message.
Right.
And he does that every so often. I don't know exactly the amount of time, but he does that every so often in different forms for different purposes. Like he came as Buddha to try to help people be less...
to establish the principles of ahimsa, because there's a lot of like animal sacrifice, and a lot of violence happening during that time.
So non-violence was the main message, and he comes usually to help people get closer to principles of mercy, kind, like all these wonderful qualities, right? And so he appears, but he's not really born. Yeah, he's not. Like
he's always existed.
His body never decays. He's like a Thor or like
nice.
You know, like one of these like mythical superheroes kind of types.
Wolverine.
Yeah.
Who's the one? I don't know anything about DC or Marvel or any of that stuff that you guys are raving about, but who's the one that just never dies?
Well, okay, Wolverine never dies, but he was born. He was a human that became...
So not like Wolverine.
So not like quite like Wolverine. So the soul is like Wolverine.
The soul is like Wolverine.
Like you can keep saying that. Yeah.
I love that line.
But like Superman, maybe. Except without any kryptonite.
Oh, I like that.
Like Krishna is
Superman without any kryptonite.
Yeah.
I'm into that. That's hot. Yeah. That's good. I can dig that. That's
anyway,
cool.
So that's another really cool part about this purport. It was just talking about Krishna never really being born, but he still appears.
Yeah, and I think we'll get to that a little bit in the next verse as well.
Okay, cool.
This notion of unbornness.
All right.
Yeah.
Should we? Okay.
All right. Text number 25. This is Krishna talking.
And this is Shama Sangita talking.
Okay, cool.
But that was Shama
I'm
saying
Shama
Shama
as
Sangita
Krishna.
talking. Okay, we're gonna stop.
Not confusing at all.
I am never manifest to the foolish and unintelligent. For them, I am covered by my internal potency, and therefore they do not know that I am unborn and infallible.
Wait. Oh, basically he's like, I don't show up for the guys I don't understand.
Right.
That makes sense, right? Like, why would you want, like if you're going to like go on a date with somebody, like why would you put on your best outfit if you know that person doesn't like you, or like it's not interested. Like, you know what I mean? Like he's
Not
not going to
interested,
manifest to like the dummies, you know?
And if you
Which I
think
get.
about it,
I get it.
how often do you yourself, being the human being that you are, think, I feel misunderstood. I feel someone doesn't know me. And I don't think we're as expansive and mysterious and lucrative as Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So what to speak of then? Someone like Krishna, is he going to be well known and understood by everybody?
No.
You know?
In my mind, I just like combined both of what y'all just said and like imagine going on a date with Krishna and like he's sitting there in front of me and he's like, yeah, so like I created the universe and like,
It'd be like,
and he's like, I mean, I can't really explain it all to you because it's really complicated, but like, like cows, I made those too. And like, I don't know. It's just like,
And I made you.
I made you. Like, do you want to be my friend? I don't know. That was just my thought process.
Oh, but it's true though. I mean, it's true. He would never like show himself to someone who is never going to have faith in him.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I think it's also similar to, I don't know, maybe it's the wrong thing to bring up, but it's also similar to the idea of like, it's not really smart to argue with an atheist. And maybe smart's not the right word, but it's just like putting yourself in a position in which that person is really fighting. It says foolish and unintelligent, meaning that they know that Krishna is God, but they were not willing to accept it, or they're willing to do other stuff, right? Like, why fight with someone who's so headstrong about some position? Rather, I think those people come naturally from different circumstances, right? Like, there's different types of men and how they approach Krishna. So like, maybe we're all foolish and unintelligent and have all been at one point or another
for real,
in all the lives, or even in this lifetime. So I think,
I think Krishna's like saying like, well, let's agree to disagree, but like I won't be in your life if you're gonna be like that. You know what I
healthy
mean?
boundaries.
Healthy boundaries.
Really healthy boundaries.
right. Because it all depends. Because what you were saying, Priya, about atheist, if someone is an atheist just because of, I don't know, different circumstances they've been through, but they're still open-minded and open-hearted, it's all about what energy they're coming to it with,
Yeah, no,
whether they're atheist or not. If, like you said, if they're headstrong or if they're whatever, just not even listening, then just argumentative, then you can't really have an open dialogue.
Yeah, it wasn't a criticism on atheists at all. It was more so about like the idea of like that argument would not be productive, and therefore Krishna's like, I'm not going to put myself in that situation in which, that, like we were saying, the healthy boundaries.
And it's so interesting that someone might think that, okay, Krishna did come down and manifest himself on earth however many thousands of years ago. So then didn't people know who he was? Because here it's saying in the purport, then how can it be said that he was not manifest to everyone? But actually he wasn't. When Krishna was present, there was only a few people, including the Pandavas. Remember, this whole conversation is with one of the Pandavas, Arjuna. So only a very few people in this time knew that he was Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It was the Pandavas and only a few others that knew him as God, as the divine.
I think for everyone else, he's Clark Kent. You know what I mean?
Krishna's
like
Clark Kent.
they just don't see his full-on thing. Like they don't see him like they're
in the
just
uniform, saving people.
Exactly. And especially in this position where he's just like Arjuna's cousin, and he's just like what is it called? Driving the chariot.
Yeah,
like he's not
chariot
even,
driver.
He's not even trying to be like the main character at all.
No. He's not main character energy right now.
No, he's
but he's
like
doing that on purpose.
On purpose.
Krishna is Clark Kent.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that. I like that a lot. That's really cool.
Yeah, a lot of people just don't know he's Superman, basically. That's what the gist of what you were saying.
Right,
Yeah.
and that all ties back again to the mood that you approach it with, because they're saying he was manifested only to his devotees, meaning those people who have really surrendered to him, to God, and he manifests himself to them as the reservoir of all pleasure, but to others, those that maybe for different hangups, different reasons, their ego, they don't want to accept him, then he was covered by his internal potency. So we've broken down Krishna's like external and internal potency. So it's so interesting. His internal potency covers almost like a veil of illusion that makes him inaccessible to so many other people who just aren't there yet. Because, it's to the extent that you surrender and cultivate all those internal qualities that we can understand Krishna.
And it's basically Krishna saying that these people, they don't know that he is unborn, right? Like they don't know that he's always been here. And I just Googled the definition of infallible. And essentially it means someone who doesn't make mistakes, right?
Yeah.
So it's like someone so they don't know that he's like this person that's always been there.
Yeah.
He will always be there.
Yeah.
And he is without mistake and without faults.
Exactly.
Perfect leader.
And you know what's
Great
interesting?
leader.
Someone might feel like, okay, I'm open-minded. How come I haven't encountered the divine yet? Well, there is a controller behind everything. Just maybe you haven't encountered him yet. Doesn't mean he's not there. We're so minute in this vast universe. We haven't encountered most of what's out there. So I think maybe just leave a little wiggle room for like, okay, maybe there's a God there and I just haven't encountered him yet,
Yeah.
They're saying everything's just out of control. It just isn't true. There is a supreme controller and every little thing is happening for a reason.
Yeah, and in the grand scheme of like, oh, why can't I see Krishna? Well, he comes like he came 10,000 years ago, right? That's around the right number? No. 5,000 years ago. I'm sorry, 5,000 years ago. And before that, it was like many, many before that. I don't know the exact numbers, but he's not coming physically anytime soon.
Right.
At least not for us listening to this podcast.
Yeah. Right.
And so, because we are at this time and place in the, how we were talking about Kali Yuga, right? Well, these yugas, we're in Kali Yuga and there's a bunch of other ones, but in Kali Yuga, we have the great opportunity of coming closer to Krishna by chanting the Maha Mantra, by doing service, by doing all these things. We still have opportunity for spirituality and connection.
Yeah.
Things are not yet as worse as they could be, to a point where we need Krishna to kind of reset and help everyone kind of go back to a better place. And so you can see him through your heart. You can see him through meditation. You can see him through different ways when you are very sincere and very connected and very consistent with your practice, but in a physical form that not in our lifetimes.
But that's an important point, that you can, even though he's not coming physically, you can interact with him in your heart, depending on how sincere you are. Because then in this whole text, in this whole chapter actually about Krishna as a person, we realize, okay, God is a person. And here the Gita is telling us, we learn what kind of characteristics, what kind of qualities we can develop that will cause them to want to see us and to interact with us in a personal way. So rather than thinking, how can I see Krishna? Think, how can I become the person that Krishna will want to see? That's the real key of it.
That's really beautiful.
I've heard that before and I thought it was really beautiful too. And I also think about it like in a material aspect of thinking about that. It's very true for anyone who's trying to aspire for a high goal, right? Like if you wanted to, I don't know, maybe this is not the right example, but if you wanted to meet a celebrity or meet someone of a high status, either you level up to be in that status, to be around that person, right?
In that circle.
Or you do something great so that you're noticed. So like either way, it's you putting the effort to become a better version of yourself. Right.
And I think it's interesting also, one point is you see it in stages that are correlated to your own realization. So I want to quickly highlight a few stages. Number one, you see God as the source. I mentioned before the different arguments for that. Number two, you can see God as the essence of everything. So that kind of progresses a little. When I look at everything, I see God as the essence. That connects to the teleological argument I had mentioned. Number three, then you start really seeing God's hand in everything and you see him as the controller of everything. Then you get to the fourth stage, where you start seeing God as a person, as someone who's actually available, attentive, affectionate, and very active and present in my own life. So just because you might be at the first stage where, okay, I'm starting to see him as the source, but I have a hard time seeing him in a personal way, doesn't mean those other stages don't exist. So that's why then look at the lives of people who are ahead of you to draw that inspiration, that it's just like a ladder that I'm stepping up along the way to the point where I can see him as someone actively available and affectionate and cares about me in my own life. So I can go from kind of the end of the source to the very personal form.
And I think the most fun part of Krishna consciousness, at least for me, is like that last stage that you just talked about, Shamali, is like seeing God as a person that you can like sing songs to, or like have a chat with, or if you have a bad day, you can yell at this person, or like, have an argument with this person, like, or like if you're having a great day, even if you're not, but like offering flowers or singing, like, I think the most fun comes from understanding that person is like someone you could really have a beautiful relationship with.
Yeah.
It's super fun.
Exactly. With what you guys are saying about that fun side, my spiritual master, actually, there's a whole YouTube video of a class he gave called The Real Adventure, because he says everything in this realm, in this material world, is like chewing the chewed. It loses its flavor. It loses its newness with a routine, right? You wake up.
Chewing the chew?
Chewing the chewed. It actually comes from, I'm sure maybe our producer, Lord Sir Abhijit, might know. It comes from in India when they would chew something.
Bon?
Oh, I'm totally
Tobacco.
forgetting. No, I don't know if tobacco, but they
Sugar
chew
cane.
sugar cane. There we go. That's what I thought it was. And they chew it. Because it gets very hot in the summer and
Well, it's
I don't know.
refreshing and sweet.
Right, and they
snack.
chew it so much to the point where it loses its flavor. So that's
Like
where that
bubble
saying
gum.
come from. I mean, yeah, sure.
Modern day bubblegum.
Yeah, like modern day bubblegum. So essentially that saying is like for something that's repetitive, redundant, like what? The
Loses its
routine of going
flavor.
to work. So material life is like that. It's like chewing the chewed. But spiritual life is where it actually gets interesting because there are these steps from going from source, essence, controller, person, that conception of God, and it becomes more and more and more interesting. It's kind of like, when I used to ice skate. In the beginning, you fall all the time. Every other second, you're on the floor. It's not fun. It's very annoying. And okay, get back up. And then you start kind of getting the hang of it. And then the first time you land a jump or a triple is like this ecstatic high, like, oh my God, I just did it. So it's kind of like that. Like you start getting the hang of it,
Okay, so can I just say something on that? I did some stalking on YouTube and I looked up Shamali's figure skating.
Did you
videos.
actually?
I really did. I
my
really
God.
did. Because
it.
I was like, she keeps talking about figure skating. Like, how good was she actually? Oh my God. I was blown away.
gotta show me.
It is like, those people at the Olympics that are doing all the twirls, like 75 twirls before they land on the ice. It was like immaculate. Like I didn't understand how good you were until I
looked it
saw
up.
those videos. Yeah.
That's so sweet.
I don't even know what you were talking about before this, but like your figure skating videos were amazing. So
my
good.
God.
You're
Thank
about to get a
you.
bunch of YouTube views.
Yeah. Ella, let's post it on Modern Yogi podcast.
Nice.
Well, and with the ice skating, it's such a meditation and there's a lot of parallels with spiritual life because it's maybe not so fun in the beginning. We sit to chant and meditate and our minds are all over the place and it's like really difficult. It's like swimming against the current, but the more you practice, the more you do it, as you get a little deeper in the river, then what'll happen automatically, the current will grab you and pull you back to Krishna. So like in ice skating, then you practice more and more. And I would fall a lot. I used to buy gardening pads that, you put on your knees and you cut them to shapes of your hip, shapes of different bones that you normally fall on and get like injuries. I mean, I have the joints of an 80-year-old woman now, but anyway. So yeah.
I do not recommend for anyone.
Yeah. So it does get fun as you go from that. Okay. Seeing him as the source, then the essence, then the controller, then the person. The personal form is very fun. And if you can stick with it long enough to get to that phase, it becomes exciting and really amazing.
The ultimate adventure.
The ultimate adventure.
Sometimes I look at whether it's like my home deities or at the temple or just like whichever deities I have a connection with. And sometimes I'm like, oh, they look really happy. Like it feels, or like, oh, it feels like they're like, I don't know, like they're not so happy today. Or sometimes I'm like, Krishna, why are you looking at me like that?
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
like why
yeah.
are you giving me that
You're
look?
like, did I do something wrong?
I know. I feel like I did something wrong. Like I gotta analyze real quick because I feel like you're looking at me weird today. And obviously the deity's not changing their face, but you develop this relationship where you kind of, it's unexplicable, honestly. Like it's just this really cool thing where you feel like you have a conversation, a connection, something there, right? So
yeah.
I feel that.
Can I just say one thing that points towards the universal nature of the Bhagavad Gita and how it can apply so well to any aspect of your life? Because we just mentioned the ice skating. So I might have said this before, but it came back to my mind that whenever I would go through the pressure of competitions and being so nervous that you literally have a panel of like 10 judges with laptops in front with like these specialized computers that they can analyze every single frame click by click that you do, I would get very, very nervous to the point where I couldn't even eat before a competition. And my mom would always talk to me about the Bhagavad Gita and how Arjuna was so nervous before the battlefield, he was having essentially a panic attack. And Krishna told him, just go out there, do your duty. And this has all already happened before. So similarly, my mom would tell me, just go out and do your duty, do what you've practiced and let go of the results. The results are out of your control. So with the philosophy in mind, I would try to use that as my sports psychology and help myself manage the nerves of competition. And I feel like, that was one phase. That was only my ice skating phase. And in the next phase, in every single phase of my life, I've been able to extrapolate different teachings from the Bhagavad Gita and apply it. So it's relevant to all aspects of life.
And you did your duty. Go check out Shamali on YouTube, okay? She is wonderful. She was doing triple axles and cannonballs and whatever the terms are. I don't know what they are, but you were doing amazing things. It was really, really great.
That's really sweet. Thank
Wonderful.
you so
That's
much.
really funny. I thought cannonballs were when you jump in a pool.
Yeah, I did. That's a completely term that I just made up. That's not a thing.
Okay.
But triple axle is a thing,
Triple
right?
axle. I was
There you
surprised
go.
when you said it. I was like, oh, look at you.
I used to watch
job.
figure skating as a kid.
Did you watch Blades of Glory?
Yeah, a little bit of that.
Yeah, but basically to kind of put it all together, Krishna in the last two texts was basically saying like there's some people who kind of don't necessarily want to really get to know me and I kind of stay away, but for everyone else I'm here. I am eternal. I am unborn. I am infallible, right?
Not making mistakes.
Yeah, he just does everything very correctly. He is the supreme personality of Godhead. And we understand that with his mercy, we can get to know him better. And it takes chanting the Maha Mantra and it takes doing some service to deepen that connection so that we can get to that really personal relationship that we've been talking about, where you really feel that connection with him. Yeah.
It gets really exciting. You kind of get a little glimpse. You lift the veil to the other side and you realize, whoa, this path is so deep. And just to recap that one point, that regardless of how this philosophy might enter your heart, whether it's really easy for you to have faith or not, the answers are all out there. Like I talked about the different arguments for the existence of God. Everything has their source in something, and life comes from life. And then the other argument that if you see design, order, beauty, it has to come from something that is a higher intelligence that contains in and of itself those qualities you're looking at. So nothing is random and chaotic, and life cannot come from matter. So through whatever avenue this information enters your mind, there's something that covers all the bases.
And if you look at it through the perspective of, hey, this is my opportunity to learn about God. And if you put it in the perspective of that being an adventure, what a cool adventure that is.
What a cool adventure.
And like you were saying, Shama Sangita, just give it a try.
Don't knock it till you try.
Don't knock it till you try.
Just do the experiments and see what happens.
All right. Anything else, ladies, on this?
I think that's a wrap up. Yeah.
Okay. So for our next episode, we will be talking about chapter 7, text number 26. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
See you next time.
Hello, beautiful souls. If you like what you're hearing, please follow us on Instagram at Modern Yogi Podcast.
And if you love what you're hearing, please make sure to share a link to our podcast at Modern Yogi Podcast with all your friends, families, and long-lost cousins.
And if you have any questions at all, send us a DM on Instagram at Modern Yogi Podcast, and we'll be sure to get back to you.
Thank you for listening to
The Modern Yogi.